And now we move on to the next segment of our bulletin on the table. Over to you, Brendan.
Thank you very much. Good evening and welcome to On the Table. Tonight we'll be discussing the recent cabinet reshuffle where we see certain portfolios maintained and experienced politicians called back to serve the government. So joining us this evening via video call is someone who is no stranger to many shows and of course I would like to say an analyst as well. Dr. Zohri Idris, CEO of Yayasan Peace, Policy and Economic Affairs Centre of Malaysia Foundation. Dr. Zohri, welcome to On the Table.
Thank you. Thank you for having me this evening.
Firstly, I'd like to ask in general, how is investors' confidence whenever there's a cabinet reshuffle? Let's talk about how it affects in general and in Malaysia specifically.
Well, I think in general, the likelihood of effects between cabinet reshufflings as confidence in the confidence of the investors are pretty low. We are talking about the consistency of policies, government regulations as part of a working ecosystem that were able to install the confidence of the investors. So these are the parameters that we are looking at when we are actually engaging with investors. Who is actually heralding, who is actually leading the ministries are coming into the second factor, but they are looking at whether the policies, the regulations, as well as the effectiveness and productivity of the government will serve as main indicators to build up the confidence between the investors.
When you mention confidence and when you mention, I would say, hope and aspiration, let's put that in that perspective. So do you think that this reshuffling should have been done sooner? Perhaps the Prime Minister needed to wait to just simply weigh out all the elections before deciding?
The current unity government has just celebrated its one-year anniversary to lead the country. And I think within that 365 days gives us an ample analytics and data for us to see the performance of the government. Hence, I think the reshuffling should actually reflect to the performance that has just been concluded by the anniversary. So this is the right timing to do the reshuffling. If the Prime Minister wants to do it, so this is the right time because that we have evaluated 365 days of the new government. As well, it gives the ministries ample timing and space to project what would be the performance for the next 2024 year. So this is the right timing. It could not be earlier or it could not be later. Though I have some feedback from some of the ministries, I mean, friends who are in the ministry saying that a little bit later would be fine because there are already some programs and some commitments that has already been installed for the former ministers or deputy ministers, but that has to be changed from now on. So it's from now and to this later, but I still think that it has to be done before January kicks in so that ministries and agencies will have an ample time to look forward what is going to be conducted in 2024. So it is now actually.
In your point of views, as much as how cabinet reshuffling has actually took place, but with regards to giving them an opportunity to bring to the table the benefits and, of course, to move forward in the country, holding various portfolios, do you think that this decision is actually not appropriate for them, or rather, it's a bit too soon for them?
I think a year would be enough for us to see how is the unity government able to lead the country. Now, bearing in mind, this is not very conventional in the years before. The unity government is set up having combined few minority parties to build the coalition. Hence why there's always a testing grounds needed to see the capabilities and the capacities of MPs to be ministers. And I think the 1 year is enough to see, to test the water, whether any particular individual is suitable to be in the ministries or is particularly more suitable to be elsewhere. Hence, this is the time actually for us us to reshuffle if it's really much needed. And also we are looking at the more challenges that's going to happen to Malaysia in terms of external geopolitical rivalries, in some internal domestic economy that is going to be the main challenge for next year. Hence, we really need a solid team. And I think the Prime Minister is just doing about that to get a solid team to lead the country.
Right. Dr. Sokri, as mentioned many times perhaps, and you might have heard this as well, if there's too many chefs preparing a particular dish, there goes the dish. So all of his appointees, perhaps the most interesting is to appoint a second finance minister. Do we need a second finance minister? Your thoughts on that?
My personal view is that the Prime Minister should not be also heralding the Ministry of Finance. Hence, the Finance Minister and the Prime Minister should be two different individuals. But in the case that the Prime Minister is also a Minister of Finance that has been conventionally been practiced since Tun Mahathir's time in the first time of his prime ministership, there is actually a need to have a second finance minister in the absence or in these situations where the Prime Minister or the Minister of Finance is away for other businesses. So yes, we really need a second finance minister to work hand in hand with the Minister of Finance or the Prime Minister to make sure that the Treasury is in place and things are moving on. And we just do not want to have backlogs of administrative matters just because that we're having an individual sharing two positions.
Right. So when you mentioned that the second minister needs to work hand in hand with the first finance minister or the prime minister, which means to say whatever decision that is made within the government, they need to get the green light from the prime minister.
That's always been the case. I wouldn't say that it's a green light. Normally, ministries are given much of their autonomy to shape and to project what would be the priorities. But all hand rests, the final decision rests on the Prime Minister as the final say. But again, we would like to see a more decentralization of powers between the Prime Minister as well as the Minister of Finance. Hence, in this case, a second Minister of Finance is needed.
All right. So on the effect of the reshuffle on the Malaysian economy and capital markets, it's presumed that expectations are even higher among the public for policies to be implemented effectively. Your thoughts on this?
I think generally it is unfair to put all of the expectations on ministers or deputy ministers. How the country is run is by the civil service agencies as well as the state as well as the federal level. So ministers and deputy ministers are just an MP that we put to head and to lead the ministries. So this is just, we have to change the mindset that it's not the duty alone of the ministers and the deputy ministers to make sure all the deliveries are met. However, we must be, and I think we need to get this message across, whoever comes into a new ministry should not actually change or diminish all the past legacies and efforts that has been done by the previous minister. We must ensure consistency of policies, regulations and directions regardless of who the minister or deputy ministers are. And this has always been the observation and the issue for our country. Therefore, in order to bring Malaysia and the Malaysian Madani across the world and to a more success, what we would like to see from the policy standpoint is the consistency of the policies that has been crafted last year or even last couple of years in 2024 and onwards, so that it's easier for us to craft, to shape and to move forward as a nation.
Brilliantly said, Doctor. Now, in terms of cost cutting, presumably it would be wise to combine two ministries into one. What do you have to say about that?
In fact, we have been combining few portfolios into one ministries, unless some ministries are very critical. For instance, the Ministry of Home Affairs has been juggling a lot of internal securities, a lot of agencies that comes under it. So that is fine to be on a single Home Affairs. But we have examples of science and technology. We have examples of women, family development, and society development together. So I think we are going towards that and into some critical matters that is not within the ministries. What we have worked so far is to establish divisions or departments or jabatan within the purview of the Prime Minister. So, for instance, that we have the divisions of economy, divisions of law under the Prime Minister's department. And this is actually not only cost-cutting, but will have a direct access to the Prime Minister's attention. So I think in terms of structure, I am very confident we are already good and excellent of it, but what is lacking is the implementations and the capabilities to execute. So I think this is what should be the priorities of ministers and deputy ministers from 2024 and ahead.
Dr. Zokri, unfortunately, we are running out of time, but we still have that window of 2 minutes. Now, of course, the incoming Yang di-Pertuan Agong, His Majesty the Sultan of Johor, now he has mentioned that he will be eradicating corruption. Do you think that this is the right time to reshuffle the cabinet, or do you think that they are in for a rough time this coming January?
Eradicating corruptions, injustices and discrimination has always been our national attention and our national plight. As I said, it is just about implementation and the capacity to execute. So regardless the decree of His Majesty Yang di-Pertuan Agong, the cabinet and the law enforcement has to be really steadfast in eliminating corruptions and to make sure there is no any ecosystem that allow corruptions to breed. So eliminating is reactions, but preventing and making sure that corruptions would not emerge is preventative measures. So it has to work both ways. So I hope that the new cabinet will have that in mind in putting SOP, governance in control, excellent in control, hence you are able to reduce and eventually eliminate corruption in the country.
Fantastic, Dr. Zokri. Thank you so much for being with us right here on the table. Here we have Dr. Zokri Idris, CEO of Yayasan Peace, Policy and Economic Affairs Centre of Malaysia Foundation. Once again, thank you so much, Doctor, for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
That's all the time we have for On the Table this evening, and it's back to you.
And that's a wrap this evening, Malaysia's Tonight. Do tune in to World Today, coming up tomorrow at 12:30 p.m. on TV2. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. I'm Olivia Nicholas. Thanks for watching.